Hello, folks, and welcome to the new stimulus package. I'm Ken Johnson, your host, and thanks so much for tuning in. In the studio with me today, I have Miss Mattie Scott, my old buddy, and my other friend over there. Thank y'all for coming in.
Thank you so
Miss
much. Thank
Carletta.
you.
Yeah, so they've been really busy trying to bring about peace and organize people to help bring about some kind of change. And they're on their way to Washington D.C. for a program called Standing for Peace and Justice, and they're going to tell us about that program and who's going and the whole ball of wax, and also share with us what they've been doing here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. Mattie, would you care to follow up and talk about this trip, standing for peace and justice?
Yeah, well, Standing for Peace and Justice came about a couple years ago. Actually, we had a vision. There was a vision that, you know, that I saw of all of us mothers standing on the steps of in the capital, the nation's capital, because we were losing so many children to gun violence and just all types of violence. And last year, it came into fruition. Carletta and I have been traveling all over, along with Elizabeth Torres, who's not here, and other mothers, to Sacramento, to Los Angeles with Mothers in Charge chapter there, with the other chapters in Detroit. And we just found that this problem of gun violence is all over our nation. Mothers are losing children every single day in the streets to gun violence, and it's not being recognized. You know, everybody's recognizing when the police shoot our kids, but every day a mother loses a child to senseless violence. There's a young man right now in the hospital. I can't give his name right now, but he was wounded by gun violence last evening in the city of Richmond, and he's fighting for his life. So where is the cry out for, the senseless violence that we have every day in our neighborhoods, and in our schools? So we are going to Washington, D.C. on June 6th, under Mothers in Charge and Women's across the nation making a difference. All of our organizations from all over the country decided this. We partnered up with mothers and fathers and faith-based groups and law enforcement and just about everybody who want to be about the solution to end senseless violence in our streets. So therefore, on June 6th, we will be in the nation's capital at the Lincoln Memorial, where Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. We're looking for over 10 to 20,000 folks that will show up there. We've already have registered over 10,000 people that will be in attendance at our June 6th, Saturday morning, 10 a.m., 10 till 2, at the Lincoln Memorial Reflection Pool in Washington, D.C. Everybody's welcome to come. Those who've lost loved ones to gun senseless violence, we're asking you to come and join us. Bring your children's pictures and enjoy us and join us on a day at the Lincoln Memorial for a day of celebration where we are telling the nation and crying out to the world and America especially that we're sick and tired of being sick and tired of our children being murdered daily in our streets, in our city streets. So that's what the movement is about. We're losing too many lives to senseless violence, and the numbers are, astronomical right now. So,
What's really powerful about this particular march is that this is an opportunity for the mothers and fathers who have lost their children to actually have a voice. And for example, we know about Baltimore and what's happening, what happened in Ferguson, and now we have what's going on in Cleveland. And a lot of the Black Lives Matters have been around the actual violence that is occurring with the police department. And we would like to take an opportunity for us to speak on what happens to unsolved murders and where they have occurred in the community in terms of actual black on black crime, Latino on Latino lives, where it's not just organizing around police brutality, but dealing with the violence that's occurring in our communities and what the effect it's having. And one of the powerful things about Mothers in Charge is that it was an opportunity for, regardless what your organization is and who you are as a person, for you to be part of Mothers in Charge. So we also have mothers and other persons who will be at the rally who have not lost anyone, but who have a compassion and a love and concern for what is happening to the community as a whole. Because the reality is that the violence that has occurred to these mothers can happen to any of us any day of the week. And people need to realize that. And so this is a travesty to be put in a position where we just have deaths occurring one after another constantly. In San Francisco, we average at least 5 deaths a month, which is a minimum number. And we also want you to realize that we will have persons there who have been maimed, meaning that they're in wheelchairs. So we have people who, if they were not actually killed, they have been shot 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times. And even when you talk to the family members, they discuss the fact that they may have one son who's deceased, but then you have an uncle and maybe 2 other children in the family who have been shot 3 and 4 times, but who have actually lived. And in terms of our agency, Sojourner Truth, Foster Family Service Agency, we want you to know that for every violent act that occurs, you have survivors of the family. And these young men have children. And so you have babies who are being actually brought into foster care who were on the scene when the murder occurred. Were laying across the father's chest and ended up walking over blood and hiding under beds because of the fact that we have this violence that's unchecked in our society. And that's why it's an urgency for you to call your family members. If you can't get to Washington, D.C., you have members on the East Coast. You call them. They have buses that will pick them up so that we can get as many people as possible right there on those steps where Martin Luther King gave his I have a dream speech. And the reality is that we want to be just as powerful as the Million Man March, and we want people to know that we will not be silenced.
Will not.
That this is the time for all these families who have been overlooked to stand up and say, we have a voice, all lives matter, and we want justice. We want to get investigations into these unsolved murders.
Now, if people watching wanna find out more, this number on the bottom, and then they have a number.
Yes, we have several numbers. We also have a website for those of you who wish to go to our Mothers in Charge website. Also, the WAMAD, Women Across the Nation Making a Difference. You can go to www.mothersincharge, all one word, .org. That's mothersincharge.org, or you can go to WAMAD, WANMAD.org, or you can call our main headquarters in Philadelphia, and that's area code 215-228-1718, or you can contact me directly at 415 here in San Francisco, 412-1469. We are standing by, Carletta, myself, and Elizabeth. We are the agents for Mothers in Charge going to Washington, D.C. We have about 17 mothers that are going with us, a couple young men and relatives and friends that's going to meet us back there in DC. We have buses, loads of buses. If you go to the website or call the main number again at 215-228-1718, and that's the Philadelphia main headquarters of Mothers in Charge, and find out where a bus is leaving from your location. We have buses leaving from New Jersey, New York, Chicago, Detroit, all over back east, Virginia, because we want everybody on that mall, because murder has claimed the lives of our loved ones. It has traumatized our families and destroyed neighborhoods for too long. We need you to stand with us to reduce the violence and heal our communities as we stand and speak for those who speak no more, because it's time. It's time. Homicide is a national tragedy. We want it to be treated just like a public health epidemic, because it is a public health epidemic. It is. And if this was Ebola or measles or any other thing, there would be treatment for it. So this is happening every day in our communities. It is a disease, and it needs to be treated as a disease.
And one other thing, in terms of the actual public health epidemic, the DSM-5, which is what they use in the clinical field to determine a diagnosis, just like ADHD and chronic depression, PTSD. So now trauma has been recognized as an actual diagnosis. And I want to let you know that in our community, we're not just facing post-traumatic stress disorder, we're facing continual trauma. These are multiple events. A lot of times people will associate the trauma going on in the community and say, oh, well, they had a flashback. Well, say, for example, when you're in the military and you come home from Iraq, you might have a flashback. But in terms of our community, we're living in a war zone. These are continual traumas on top of traumas. And you know what the example is? You have a young little kid who's afraid to get on a bus because he has actually known someone who witnessed a murder. He's afraid that they know who he is, or it's been a home invasion. Then when they get to the school, they're traumatized. They can't think because they're so busy. They're fearful. They can't sleep at night because they're constantly afraid of gunshots. And the reality is they can't go to the park. So here you got this little kid. He can go anywhere, but he never feels safe in his community. This is continual trauma. And we, as a community, we need to put the neighbor back in the word hood. We need the neighborhood. We need the clergy. We need to open these church doors and go out into the community and gather these children up and show them what love and care is all about. A lot of these kids are in homes where the family is already going through multiple stages of trauma. The mother may have a substance abuse problem, and a lot of the kids in foster care right now, both parents are incarcerated, mother and father. So that means that they don't, when you're incarcerated, it's the same type of loss as a death, because they can't connect with their children. These children end up looking for a family. And where do they end up? One of the works I do is with Anti-Trafficking. Our girls as young as 8 years old are being put on the street and selling their bodies. And the reality is they're picking them up and they're kidnapping these kids. When they get finished taking them down to L.A., and then to Mexico, then from there to Arizona, then into Vegas. When they get back a year later, they're not the same child.
Not the same.
Now just think about it. These kids are going to grow up, and then they're going to have children. What kind of chance will we have? This is our future. We need to realize this is a state of emergency. And the way for us to begin to address this is that we have to let people know that what's going on in our community matters just as much as what a police brutality case is about.
That's right.
The same outrage that we have.
For that.
Which, I am a lawyer, and yes, I have an outrage for what's going on, say, for example, in Cleveland. The reality is that our legal system is broken. But at the same time, they're taking our children who are victims and giving a rap sheet. They end up in juvenile justice, and from there, they go straight into jail. And from after they get one arrest, the percentage is over 75% that they're going to end up in a major institution. So we have to wake up. We really have to wake up. And one of the things that Mattie has done is that she has reached out to those children. And that's how we came together. Because we care about the children, not just the mothers and their loss, but also their families.
That's right, that's left behind.
That's left behind to deal with the loss.
Yes. And see, the families left behind after violence, they should have the help they need to address the trauma to help rebuild their lives. And oftentimes, they don't get that help. We've watched I'll give you an example of the Sosa family. We were on here not too long ago to talk about Maria Sosa's family,
which is Latino.
The Latino mom who lost her life in the Blvd district in front of her 2 children. She was shot because of a drop while there was a shootout, and in that shootout, she was coming downstairs to retrieve her mail, and her 2 children, 10 and 8, watched their mom get hit with a bullet in her head, and she died instantly in front of them. Okay, and so that family is traumatized on top of the whole neighborhood regarding the shootout that took place. So everybody in that neighborhood was traumatized by the death of the mother, the traumatization of the kids, the trauma that went on in their community. So where's the services for that community? We did a march in that community. We put our arms around that family to try to help them. Also, to try to help guide them through the victim services. And oftentimes because of the trauma that's going on, the family structure is so broken down from the grief that oftentimes the ball gets dropped. And the ball gets dropped on both sides of the system because of the trauma that have impacted these families. So, we're working hard with the district attorney's office, with Lynn Westry and Department of Public Health, who does an amazing job with these families and helping them to direct them with the funeral services and all of that. But after the funeral service is over, then the family, that's where the healing, that's where they need the work. And that's where we come in at, to make sure that those services don't get dropped, to make sure that the kids do get the services they need, to make sure that there's placement for that mother if she can't stay in that house anymore, to try to help her find housing. And that's been one of the major issues, is trying to find housing for families. It's been horrible,
especially in San Francisco.
Especially in San Francisco.
Right, the rents is skyrocketing. So you have some photographs here. You want to?
Oh yeah, I have photos of my son, who's George C. Scott, who was murdered. It'll be 19 years this year on July 17th. He was murdered in the Fillmore area while trying to resolve an issue between 2 friends that had a dispute over some gold jewelry, and he knew them. They were people he knew, and being a peacemaker that he was, he lost his life by trying to stop that altercation. And that was July 17, 1996, and this case remains unsolved. I have a niece here, Keisha Walker, who was cyberbullied also December the 4th. She was cyberbullied on the internet and suffering from depression, and she went to the Golden Gate Bridge and she jumped off.
Oh,
yes, beautiful young lady.
Yes.
Graduated from college and doing great work, a massage therapist, and so as you can see, all violence matters. We're trying to save all of our children's lives, and then I lost my nephew Timothy Scott in 2007, who didn't want to be part of another homicide that took place. And because he was in the car with the guy who did the other homicide, his life was taken by the same person, and he was thrown out of the car and died instantly on the street. And recently, just January past, we had lost 4 young men lives on Page and Laguna here in San Francisco. and which was really horrific, and which the case is still not solved. It's been promised to these moms that they're looking into it, and I know Chief Sheriff is doing his best, but we need answers because this was a horrific thing. It never has happened in San Francisco before, and we are just, it was horrific this year. We had 9 homicides in the month of January this year in our city, and
so we have double digits now.
Double digits now. We're at double digits. We've never been at double digits this quickly before,
and the summer is just starting.
Right.
And that's the critical part, is that when you talked about what are the services, one of the things in terms of victim services is that they did cut back the dollars.
Right.
So now it's only $5,000.
It's only $5,000.
And you have to realize too that there are special criteria around who can actually get the funds. So what it boils down to is if this particular person has a history of being a gangbanger or involved in any type of
crime that would have caused this homicide.
Exactly.
They're not entitled to it.
They're not entitled to it, but just think about it. They have a family.
Yeah,
this is my
our
point.
time is really running.
And they have young babies. A lot of these youngsters have babies.
Can you give your number again for those people out there?
Yes, thank you for having us. If you want to get information about the rally, please give me a call, Mattie Scott, at 415-412-1469. And again, if you want other information you can go on the Mothers in Charge website to Mothers in Charge, all one word, .org. And you can also call the phone number at area code 215-228-1718, and we want everybody to come, even those of you who haven't lost children, because all lives matter, and it's about all of us or none of us. We want to stop the killing and start the healing.
And if you want to get some services here in San Francisco, don't forget Sojourner Truth Foster Family Service Agency. You can call me directly at 415-412-6338. We have 2 offices. One at 150 Executive Park, Suite 3300, San Francisco, California 94134, and our other office is in the Village at 1099 Sunnydale, San Francisco, California 94134. 415-412-6338.
Okay, we're for those viewers tuned in to channel 76, we're tuning off now, and we're going to channel 29. We have about 5 more minutes, so we want to talk about your individual organizations. Now, Standing for Peace and Justice, that's an organization.
No, that's just the title of the event.
Okay,
I'm Healing for Our Families in Our Nation, representing mothers and fathers and families of homicide and violence. So anybody that have any have lost a loved one to homicide and violence, have to go to trial, have to go to court, do a funeral, or get some services. Those are the things that we provide. And we also work with the incarcerated, those coming out of incarceration. We work all around with healing, getting the persons healed that have been hurt by any type of violence.
Well, thank you so much, man. You really, I mean, you have a big heart to go through all of this. You're really doing a really beneficial service.
Well, it happened to me. So when it happens to you and you go through it, then you have to be the resource. What better person to be the resource to help another mother who's lost a child? And Carletta and I are both grief and loss counselors, and we work together because the violence crosses over, our work crosses over, and that's why we're together with Sojourner Truth Foster Family Service Agency.
And, just wanted to say that we have a new program. It's called Addie's House. And what we do is direct grief and loss counseling. So, say, for example, when Healing for Our Families in Our Nation actually does the vigil and then also helps with the funeral, when the mother is ready later on to begin to deal with the grief and the loss and their family, then we have a mechanism to where they can come to Addie's house. And what happens is that other mothers get together and they talk about what it's like to be the only parent and what that means for the rest of the lives of their children. Also to talk about the grief that they're feeling, the loss. And then their children are actually in groups. So say, for example, from 5 to 9, they're together. From 10 to 12, they're together. And then 13 to 15, they're together. And then we have the older teens, 16 to 21. And what happens is they get to be with other children who have also had a loss. A lot of times, the kids are very cruel at school. And to be able to be in a situation where they could be with other kids who, what they all have in common is that they've lost their parent, then or their brother or sister or sibling, then it gives them a chance to verbalize what's going on with their pain and to do it in a way where they don't have to be afraid that they're going to make their mom sad.
Right.
And mom doesn't have to be afraid that she's going to make their children sad. See, because we all grieve, and we have to be able to be in a situation where they can feel safe. And so this is what this is all about, so that the healing can really move forward
And begin.
and to really begin. So we want people to know that we're not just talk.
We do the work.
We do the work, and we have the actual clinical background to actually help with the trauma. We also have LCSWs and MFTs through Sojourner who actually go into the community and work with those families. And we have a lot of children that at the end of the day, the families can no longer care for them due to these different situations that occur. And they end up in the actual, child welfare system. And so we have trained families specifically around trauma to help the children. Because when a child breaks down and is weeping and having nightmares at night, you have to have someone who understands what they're going through. You don't tell this kid, oh, you just got to go to bed and go to sleep. No. You have to understand why
even
they
the
can't
mothers.
sleep.
Yeah.
You see?
Thank God
and
for
the
y'all
same
and
thing
what you
is
do.
true with the mothers.
Thank God. I mean,
Even
I
the
don't know.
mothers, because the mothers go back to work. They can't go back to work. Their bosses mess with them. They're traumatized, so they need time off work, just like the Family Leave Act.
Exactly.
The Victim Services Fund is not enough. When they can't pay for that funeral, we have to go to the community and ask for help, ask for support. We're doing our classes. We're going to be doing some training to teach mothers how to get insurance for their children, how to get better services in mental health, and teach them about mental health and how it can help them. So we do a lot of educational things to help our community to build them. It's not just about ones who lost loved ones to gun violence. It's about mass incarceration, suicide, foster care, all of that. We do that work because those are the things that are affecting our community today. And it's about all of us or none of us. Even with police brutality, even if it's a young man that got his life stricken in the community, everybody should be outraged because it's paralyzing our communities, and it's time for us to build our communities back up together.
Thank you, ladies, so very much. Our time is out. But, man, you guys really be doing it. I just want to thank you again for the work you do. Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you for
more than
having
welcome.
us.
Thank you
We
for
hope
having
you can join us in
please,
D.C.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Please come to D.C.
Please come to D.C. Standing for
that's
peace and
and
justice.
stand up there and voice our concerns.